On today's Australian Open Shot Clock with PSN tennis editor and former top 15 player in the world Andrea Leanne, England's newest hope, Kyle Edmund, upsets KyrgiosDimitrov, who blows a huge opportunity to break through in a slam. Speaking of breaking through, 5 of the 8 remaining semifinalists in both draws are looking for their first slam, including next-gen champion Chung and embattled Simona Halep. We'll recap all the quarterfinal action, preview the semifinal matches as Andrea Leanne's Australian Open Shot Clock on the Prime Sports Radio Network starts now. All right, I'm Greg DePalma. Welcome back to Andrea Leanne's Australian Open Shot Clock for this Wednesday, the 24th of January 2018. And Andrea, another slam has come and gone for KyrgiosDimitrov and Elise Martens. And once again, they'll leave disappointed, but there are still 5 players looking for a slam breakthrough.
Oh, we've had so many fresh faces. In the men's draw, I'm so excited to see Chung doing well and Kyle Edmund. Boy, when you have that British contingent there at these tournaments, it makes such a difference. And boy, he has really excited them, and he played a great match. He's showing great composure, fitness, and to, of course, as you said, come through that match against Grigor. And Chung, it's so terrific, Greg, to have someone coming up in that part of the world, the Asian part of the world. They needed a hero. Kei Nishikori's been out with injury. He's on, I think the last chapter of his career. I think he still has 3 or 4 or 5 more years to go. But it's nice to see a fresh face, an heir apparent to Kei Nishikori. And Chung is such a really popular guy, even though he doesn't speak English that well, Greg. So great to hear him with Jim Courier in these post-match interviews, and he introduced his whole team. And, of course, Neville Godwin, his new coach, who he trained with in Thailand, is right there front and center, and his parents and his brother. So I think it's great to hear the backstories of these players, because I think, to me, that is really what fleshes it out for the viewer and the fan, and they really become invested with the competitors and then with the game.
Yeah, and on the women's side, Elise Martens is still hanging around, so she's the surprise of the women's side after she had a nice win. And you can say what you want about the disappointment, of course, of Svitolina not being able to make her first Grand Slam semifinal, but I guess maybe she just wasn't really fit. Maybe there was an injury.
Svitolina made it very clear in the post-match press, finally was able to vent about the hip injury that she's been dealing with now for a few weeks. Started in Brisbane, where she did, in fact, win that title, having lots of big wins, Konta, Pliskova, but said she really was not even sure she would play the Australian. It was so painful. She's been on a heavy dose of painkillers. And we don't like to emphasize this, and I think it was smart of Svitolina not to bring it up in the press and not to make a point of it, to give her competitors the heads up that she really was impaired physically and moving, but also because you don't want to take credit away from the opponents. And Mertens deserves enormous credit. She comes from the Kim Clijsters Academy. She's worked hard, and this is a player who really maximizes everything she has. She won the Hobart tournament now for the 2nd year in a row, really started her rise there in Hobart a year ago, where we saw really what a cagey competitor is. She really gets everything out of her stroke. She doesn't have a big weapon, doesn't have a big game, not a lot of flair, but she's a real workhorse, and she has the game face on. I think she did know Svitolina was injured, and that's why she really hung in there. Very few unforced errors, very few mental mistakes, and so we give her credit. Justine Henin tweeted out to her her congratulations, and I think, Greg, it's great to see these mentors really taking this next-gen group under their wing. We mentioned there was a award at the Australian Open for the Labour Cup, acknowledging the Labour Cup again. We'll put it out there, of course, the Australian Open is a partner of it. But it's great to see that this event has really transpired the whole year, not just the weekend, where we see Roger Federer and Rafa Nadal and Cilic, again, taking the next gen under their wing, whether it's Sasha Zverev, whether it's been Jack Sock. But here at the Australian Open, taking the younger guys under their wing and really giving them encouragement and really spurring them on to improve and to grab that, the next step in their careers.
Mertens is a 2-1 dog in the semifinals. She'll take on Caroline Wozniacki, looking for her first Grand Slam. She, of course, had a 3-set tough match. You thought it would be a tough match against Suarez Navarro, and it was. She has faced Mertens once and beaten Mertens last year on clay in 3 sets.
Well, I think this will also be a tough match for Caroline. I think every match is going to be tough for Caroline, but what I love about Caroline now, she's bringing in that McEnroe mojo. You know, we're not seeing Minnie Mouse out there anymore. She's just not trying to put the ball back and having it sit up in the middle of that court where these players were coming in and swatting it away like flies. She's doing something with the ball. She's got an edge. She's got a feistiness now to her. And although she says, yes, it's nice to have her fiancé David Lee there because it gives her a certain peace of mind that she can just focus on the tennis and have fun with it, I don't buy it. I think she is such a tough competitor that when she says she lost to Lee Na at the Australian Open and that loss still sits with her and she wants to be in this final, I believe her. And I think that she is a real gritty competitor underneath. It reminds me a little bit of Chrissy Everett. She is tough mentally, and she's going to do whatever it takes to win the match. And if that means playing more offensive tennis, which is counter to her personality as a counterpuncher, then she's going to do it. And that's what we saw against Suarez-Navarro, because quite frankly, Greg, Suarez-Navarro is a good player. I remember watching her play Venus at the Open last year, and for a set and a half, I asked myself, why isn't this woman number one in the world? I mean, she was just absolutely phenomenal. And then, of course, you started to see the breakdown. I saw no panic on Venus's face when she, went through her in a set and a half. Venus did not panic. She wasn't really worried about it. And then I started seeing Venus move the ball. And you could see that Suarez-Navarro, who has the European topspin, the nice strokes, is able to really take the ball either early or also be the counterpuncher and put it back. She can play defense, offense, was able to feed off of Venus's pace. And it wasn't until you moved her that you realized she actually doesn't move that well. And she also is not as fit as some of these players, especially Caroline. I think that is really what came into play in that third set. Caroline had a match point. She could have put it away in two, lost it. And I give her credit because when you lose that match point, and you're playing at 1 o'clock in the morning, by the way, because these girls had to wait till after the men to play this night match, which is another issue we'll get to later. It showed how tough mentally Caroline is and how willing she is to go the distance. She didn't need Peter down there. There's no on-court coaching at the Grand Slams. She was able to figure this out on herself and find that resolve within. And that is what I think made the difference along the lines of the fact Caroline started to move the ball, started to see that Suarez-Navarro was really winding down, was huffing and puffing. Even when they went to shake hands, you could see she was a bit winded. And so to me, that is really what made the difference in that third set was the conditioning and was the fitness.
All right, and then the other semifinal setup is going to be a really good one. Halep against Kerber. Kerber just destroys Madison Keys, and now for the second slam in a row, Madison goes out of a Grand Slam by getting destroyed in her final match. So that's psychologically, how do you think she's taking that, or how should she take that?
Well, this was a surprise to many, but it really came down to how Madison was going to execute. She's always dependent on the big serve, the big forehand. It's such a lethal combo, and there is no one who strikes the ball more offensively than Madison. I mean, it is scary, scary fast. It is scary hard. And when you see her strike that ball, it is absolutely, it's just pulverizing to the opponent. But she wasn't able to really do that against Kerber. And when you look at the stats, they show that. 13 winners for Keys, 13 winners for Kerber. Never, ever would expect Kerber to have as many winners as Keys. And then you go to the serving. Keys only won 43% of the points on her first serve. This is a shot she really depends on for those free points, for those cheap points, and to give her that edge in the game, a psychological edge. And she wasn't getting that from Kerber. So the question is, they're going to have to go back to Lindsay Davenport, the Bill Belichick of tennis, and figure out why. Why was she not getting free points on Kerber? She's serving with the same velocity. There's no difference in the fact that she'd gone through her first four opponents with this serve and forehand combo. What was the difference? The difference was this is a tough matchup for Keys. Kerber knows her game, and she was able to read the Keys serve. And at this point, we credit Keys. Look, she's had a tough year with the wrist surgeries. She put in the hard work. She had the right attitude in the off season. She had 8 weeks, and she has made enormous progress. So she has everything to be proud about herself, Greg, in what she in the performance she did in Melbourne. But so now you go to the next step when you have to beat players like Kerber. And to me, it's about mixing up the patterns. You can't let Angie get in control of these pattern plays where she had her lefty forehand to Madison's backhand, and she was really dictating the points. And to me, it's about not giving Angie the same looks twice. We saw that with Sue Shea, that she was able to mix it up with the angles and the drop shots and really toy with Kerber. So I think that, Kerber does feed off playing these power players because they also give her a target. They give her the patterns that she loves, and it just feeds into all her strengths. And it'll be interesting to see how Lindsay comes back with a game plan for Madison next time, because you can bet she will, Greg.
All right, with all the game planning, though, is it too early to think about her psyche as far as losing this convincingly in these slams at these moments? It's only 2 matches, but when do you start getting concerned about her psyche?
I'm not worried about Madison's psyche. I'll tell you why. I think she turned the corner. There's been so much talk about this word attitude. Attitude of Kyrgios, of Sock, of Dimitrov, of, Madison, Sloane, Coco, Halep. And to me, what comes before the attitude is the self-confidence and the belief.
Sure.
And you got to have the self-confidence and the belief in yourself before you then show the right attitude. And to me, when Madison got to the finals of the U.S. Open last year, of course, she's been hearing since she was a teenager, you're going to be a Grand Slam champion, you can be number 1 in the world, blah, blah, blah. She knows she's had the potential. She knows she has the ingredients. But I think it took getting to that final at the U.S. Open to make her really believe in herself. And, it doesn't matter, Greg, how many times people tell you, your biggest supporters, your biggest, team members, how much, you can do it and how you have to believe in yourself. It has to come from within. And I think the moment she got to that final and, lost to Sloane albeit, but still got to the final, I really think that was a turning point for Madison where she really believed she could be number 1 and she really believed she could win these. And that's where you saw the attitude in the off season. She was so professional. She was so upbeat. She was so positive about doing everything she needed to do. It wasn't worrying about vacations and cooking and all the extracurricular activities. It was about doing what was right for her career. And that's the maturity that really encourages me to believe that this is still a learning lesson for her in Melbourne, and she's going to take it, and she's going to be a better player because of it.
All right. Speaking of potential psychological barriers, Karolina Pliskova, whenever she takes on Simona Halep now, she's got some issues. And look, congratulations to the media darling, Simona Halep. Of course, I'm being sarcastic, like if you didn't know. But anyway, congratulations to her because she looks like she's just on a big-time roll right now.
Well, obviously first of all, Simona showed no signs of the ankle injury in this match. I watched both warm-ups. I watched the warm-up before Osaka, the warm-up before Pliskova. And in the warm-up before Osaka, she clearly was not able to anchor that left ankle. There was no question about it. She couldn't run back for overheads and hit off that backhand side. Against Pliskova and as well in the warm-up, you immediately saw that she was able to put weight on the foot. So, look, she's been there now for 10 days since this injury. So the silver lining in injuring yourself at a tournament is that you have everything at your disposal to heal the injury. I mean, so she has done every therapy, every kind of rehab you can imagine to get this ankle going again. And they've done a good job, and she's done a good job. And she is moving well now. We remarked at the beginning of the tournament, everyone thought, oh, this is such a tough draw. I didn't think it was such a tough draw. You didn't, because she has Pliskova's number. This is not someone who has ever bothered her. She feeds off the pace. She loves the target of playing Pliskova. She reads the serve. And, and that's what Pliskova said. She goes, there's nothing I can do about this. Simona just likes playing me. She just likes playing me. She loves my pace. She feeds off it. She then hits the ball back faster. And, what was interesting is that Pliskova only had 2 aces. Now, this is someone who really relies on that first serve, and she only had 2 aces in the match, Greg, and she was not getting the free points. Now, she did go up 3-love in the beginning, and you thought that she was in command. I thought that was really, though, because more of a reflection that Halep just finding her rhythm, getting into the match, and starting to serve a little bit better. I thought her serve was a little bit erratic in the beginning, especially with the double faults. And she finally did find the rhythm. She got into it. She loosened up. She realized the foot was okay, and she started to play her game. But what I loved about Halep in this match, and I think this is the best match she has played, I can think of in the last year, is because I love the offensive topspin. And we have talked so much about Halep developing this offensive side of her game. She's a counterpuncher by nature. She loves to play defense. She's the best mover on the tour. I saw a video of her dribbling a soccer ball on her feet for, it seemed like an eternity. I think it was like 12, 15 minutes. and her father was a footballer. So you see the inherent athleticism in Simona and the ability to probably play many sports because she's so talented. But, to me, she had to develop this offensive side. The question was, what was the approach? Because, when I was growing up, we all hit the ball flat in the United States. We hit it flat. And so telling us to take it on the rise and be more offensive was an easy transition. But she comes from that European topspin mold where you hit the circle, you get under the ball, you roll the wrist, low to high, and you hit that topspin. And so for her to hit the ball on the rise was tougher. But what I saw and what I absolutely loved, and this is why I think she's going to stay at number one now for quite a while, is that she was able to accelerate that racket head far faster to create a faster topspin that, Greg, when it bounced, doesn't just sit up, it ricochets out. And she was able to move Pliskova off the court wide on both sides and open it up and then have the swing volley, the easy swing volley to put away. And this is the type of offense I think she really needed. It was using the fundamentals of her game, which is topspin, and learning how to make it more aggressive. And I credit her. We credit Darren Cahill, because this has been a process, as it always is, Greg. It's always a process. Mm-hmm. And I think there was a lot thrown at her last year at this time. She had an injury. She looked exhausted physically to me. She was running around the globe after the Australian, making player commitments for the tour in Russia and here and there and all over the place. And I thought that by the time she got to Miami, to me, when I saw the Conta match, she just looked absolutely exhausted when I went out there for that night match. And, of course, when you're physically tired, it doesn't help the mental frame of mind. They both looked tired, quite frankly, in the match. It was not a pretty match. But I think it was important for Simona to, no matter how many times Darren Cahill kept telling her, you can be number one, because he's been her biggest supporter, and we give him huge credit. She had to really believe that and find those answers within herself. And so I think these, little timeouts were great. I think it was terrific because it gave her that time to find the answers from with herself and get the self-confidence. And that's why Greg, take such umbrage with people who try to knock her down, because the belief starts with the confidence, and you want to see Simona confident. You want to see people really boosting her up, and especially the tour wrapping their arms around her and really supporting her, because that is what's going to make her play her best tennis and have that belief. And I give her credit. Mm-hmm. I think that she looked absolutely phenomenal out there. And, when they asked her, Sam Smith did the post-match interview on court, and she said, can you tell, because, we're all Australians here, and Darren's Australian, can you tell us really what he adds to your game? And he said, and she said with a big smile on her face, he just relaxes me, he makes me feel good. And I remember watching the warm-up for her match with Osaka, and I watched the warm-up she had with her team. And you could just see that there's a personal connection there. At the end of the warm-up, as Darren was a nice guy throwing the practice balls to the kids, and at the end he tried to do a tweener and shanked it. And Simona just started laughing, And we'd had a very tense warm-up because no one really knew what her ankle was going to be. And then all of a sudden he does this, and she was laughing and smiling. The team had some good fun with it. She picked up the ball and tossed it to the kid herself. But you can just see that he does have that air about him that does relax her, that does make her feel good on a personal level. And, to me, that's important. We've talked about what coaches bring to the table. They all bring different things. And I think that, Simona is a much, much more intense person than people realize. And I think having that balance, having her mother there, having the whole team there. I remember saying to Darren, boy, Simona's in great shape in Washington. It's so terrific. And he said, well, you got to credit her fitness guy. He's gotten her into great shape. And I agree with that too, Greg. The ability to accelerate that racket head means that she had to have that physical strength in the upper torso, which she does have. You can look at her. You can see she's fit and strong. And I think that also helps her compensate for the ankle, the overall fitness. So we give her a lot of credit. She's going to have a tough match with Kerber. It's 4-3 in favor of Kerber. And they've always battled. To me, Simona is, has the more natural ability when it comes to moving, and she's playing more aggressive tennis. I think she's going to give Angie more to handle this time, but it's going to be interesting to see what Angie comes up with.
Do you think it's possible, though, that Halep is giving a little too much credit to Darren? I mean, seriously. I don't think there's a coach on tour that we hear more about. And look, she's number one. There's no question he deserves credit. Is she giving him, though, too much credit?
It's funny because we had a Facebook fan who asked us, they saw this video that's now been all over the place of Darren. The Facebook fan said, why is he fisting himself? I've never heard that term, fisting himself, during her match against Davis. And he was obviously in the stands, and all of a sudden you saw him, they have a video of him taking his fist and, kind of hitting his head. And they thought perhaps Simona had done something wrong. In fact, I thought the exact opposite. I thought that was in response to the fact that she had played aggressive, she had taken control and won the point. And I think he was kind of, quote unquote, fisting himself because he was saying she's got to do that more often. Look, I remember Darren in the booth, and I remember whenever Leighton Hewitt came on court to play a match, we had to have the other monitor on so he could watch Leighton. He gets very invested in his players. Yes, he's been in men's tennis. It's been duly noted that he worked with Leighton Hewitt when he was one, and Andrea Agassi as well. And so he's, used to men's tennis. And I'm sure he'll be the first to say, as he did to the New York Times, that, when you're coaching a female player, it's a little bit different. And it's a little bit different in wrapping your arms around the whole equation. And so I think that this has been a journey for him too, and he deserves enormous credit. But he is, even his Aussie friends have told me they've never seen him so emotional. And look, we've discussed it. There have been times I've been at the tournament. I'm far more concerned about Darren than I am about Simona. Simona seems just fine. But Darren, of course, I think that he takes this very personally. I think he takes great pride in it. And I think that his friends know that. And he has many, many friends on all venues of the tour, and I think that they have great loyalty, and I think that they are very happy to see him getting credit, and so are we. But yeah, you're right. You don't see it so much of it. You don't hear the other. I mean, the guys, you barely can get I want to thank my team at the end there. But right. I think that this will pass. I think everyone will, chill out a little bit. And, I look at Simona now. She's got all the confidence now. She's got the belief. She's gotten to number one. She's a superstar in Romania. She's got tens of millions of dollars in the bank account. She's good. Everything now is really icing on the cake, in my opinion, with her. But I guess it's about the tour now. And, you want to see, when they go to promote the Fab Five, for their tour, the Fab Five who can challenge Simona for number one, you don't see Wim Facet and Thomas Strupa and Thomas, all the coaches' faces in there. You see the players, and the tour has to promote their players. They have to do it positively because, Greg, in sport, people and parents bring their kids, and people go to watch sporting events or tune into their TV to be entertained, to see the positive storylines, and to be inspired. And they want to see, with all the negative in the world, they really want to see, a lot of the smiles and the good parts, and of course the battles on court, but also those inspiring stories. And when I look at these girls now, I see sexy, shiny, young, fun, and really women who are thriving and striving, and to me that's inspirational. And so, you hope that the tour gets behind that, because obviously the coaches are a big part of it. Obviously the whole team is a big part of it. But you have to look at the big picture and realize it's the players you got to really push.
Is it dangerous for a player, and I guess every player is different, is it dangerous for a player, I'm not saying Simona, but any player, to get too reliant on their coach?
Well, we talked about this, and with a lot of players, not just Simona, and we talked about this when it came to that on-court coaching, where, to me, if I were advising a top player, I would say never do it. And a lot of people, I said, don't bring your coach down there. You can figure this out for yourself. And as we've seen with the Grand Slams that don't allow on-court coaching, these girls do just fine.
Sure.
They figure it out. Caroline Wozniacki did not need Peter Wozniacki down there giving her a speech about what she needed to do. She was fine. Pliskova is fine. Kerber is fine. She didn't need Wim Facet telling her how to change that match against Shui. She figured it out. So I have great confidence in the players, but I think what is more important to me, Greg, is, again, it goes back to the self-confidence and belief. And the best gift a coach can ever give a player is allowing them to learn to think for themselves and to find the answers for themselves on court. And that's what tennis as a sport, I think, has done so well over the years, that other than any other sport that has so many coaching teams and this and that and giving the player the plays and all that, is that these are athletes that are able to think for themselves on court. And that, to me, inspires kids to realize you can figure out the answers too. We'll give you the equipment, we'll give you the tools, we'll tell you help you to help manage the situations, but you can learn how, when you get yourself into these situations, to think your way out. And that goes beyond tennis, it goes into life. So that is one thing that I love about the game, and one reason that I love to see the players able to, think through and navigate through themselves on court. And, if they don't and they lose, then they learn from it and they're able to do it the next time.
By the way, before we go over to the men's side, we talked a little bit about this last time. What about these night matches that the women have to be dealing with? I mean, it seems, isn't it? I mean, seriously. I mean, it's like I would have thought the time difference in Australia, these matches would be over, when you're having breakfast in the States. I mean, they're still going on.
Well, let's put it out there. You have the night matches. They want a women's match and a men's match. The women's is 2 out of 3. Usually, on average, the match is about an hour and a half. Can it go 2 hours? Sure. But on average, the usual amount is about 90 minutes. And then you get them off and on court. And so the men usually get on about, they're starting the night matches at 7. They'll get on around 8:30, maybe 9 o'clock at the latest, but they still have all night to play 3 out of 5. To put the women after a men's 3 out of 5 set match is absolutely ridiculous. It's unacceptable to me, and this must be changed immediately. And of course, as you know, Greg, as we do, we've been on the phone about this because it is absolutely preposterous. I saw yesterday they finally put both women's matches during the day, which we suggested. They said, you know what? What's the point in having a women's match on at night if you start it near midnight? Ash Barty, Gavrilova, Pliskova, Caroline Wozniacki. All these girls played almost close to midnight when they started their evening sessions. And to me, this is ridiculous. The fan matches, most fans will leave, especially if they have children, around 11 p.m. And so that means they never get to see the women play. So it defeats the purpose. To me, it's, you put the women on, even if it's a long match, they still get to see the men's match, most of it at least 2 or 3 hours of it before they leave at 11. Yeah, you have the hangers on and the guys, falling off the rails at 1 a.m., with Caroline Wozniacki playing, who stick around. But on average, the fan, it hurts the fan who really doesn't get to see the second match. They only get to see one match. And it hurts also, quite frankly, the press. Why should they have to wait around till 2 in the morning to get another story in on another match? I mean, the whole thing doesn't make sense. And so, we were on this. And look, the bottom line is when they go to do scheduling, you have the tournament officials in there, you have TV, and you have the tour officials. And it is a responsibility of the tour officials, the supervisors, to advocate for the players. And but the bottom line is, Greg, TV has enormous influence because they're paying the big bucks, and they want whom they want to focus on their broadcast.
Yeah.
And so that really is the primary part. But so the tournament people are usually going to go with what TV wants. But to me, that's where you have to give more authority to the tour supervisors who are in these meetings to say, hey, we're not doing this anymore. A, it doesn't make sense. It's not good for the fan or the viewer and or the players or the press. And B, it's not right. You don't put a 2 out of 3 set match after a 3 out of 5. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, and look.
And where's Billie Jean King? I'm trying to get Billie because she's down there. And I want Billie to advocate for this, quite frankly, because, you need someone to get behind these things and say, you know what? I don't like this. And someone who has a backbone, who has the right principles and is not going to put up with this. And she's down there being honored for 2 weeks, which I think is phenomenal. I think it's great. They've had a WTA reunion and all these sorts of good things. But boy, wouldn't it be great to have Billie say to Craig Tilly, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, this and overall, what broadcasting, the idea of having these late events in every sport in general as well, it's frustrating. I mean, I don't believe that the target audience, if you were looking for one, should be in the 20s. I think it should be 30s, maybe even 40s, because those are the people who are going to spend most of the money. And those people are usually the people who have a lot of work, jobs, commitments, whether it's Australia, because in Australia, you're asking these people, like you said, you're asking them to go home at 2 o'clock in the morning themselves, or, turn the TV off at 2 o'clock in the morning. And this is for all sports. It's not just tennis when we're talking about the scheduling of these late matches or events. I don't understand. And I know some people will take a look like in the States and you talk about, well, you got to talk about the West Coast people and you can't start it too early because it'll be 4 o'clock on their time if you start something at 7 o'clock on the East Coast time. But there's got to be a happy medium. You can't. I think people on the West Coast, I think they're better off. If something starts earlier, take off of work earlier, get home. They're not the ones that have to worry about getting up, and then losing 3 or 4 hours worth of sleep. So I just hope that that's also something that most of these sporting events will start to consider as well. Instead of starting, college basketball championship games at 9:30 or Super Bowls, at 7 or 8 o'clock, and they don't go off till midnight. I mean, and matches in tennis. I mean, start them a little earlier. I mean, please. So
well, they actually started a little bit earlier than the U.S. Open, and the U.S. Open does a little of this, but they're far more selective about it. I mean, personally, last night they had a men's doubles and then and men's singles and then a men's doubles, and to me that makes sense in the second week. That makes perfect sense. You have the quarterfinals, and they put both ladies on in the afternoon. If you're not going to get the ladies on by a decent hour, let them play both matches in the afternoon. Who cares at that point? The players would rather do that.
Yeah.
And it'd be nice to feature the ladies at night. I'm sure fans would like to see that, but you can't do it after the men's. And I think that the group that really concerns me most is you lose the kids. Kids can't stay there that late. And this is the target audience that tennis is really going after, to try and really appeal to the kids, get them interested, and get them into the sport. And whether it's watching it on TV or watching it live at the stadium, either or, you just can't have matches like that starting that late.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's the combination of the adults that are between 30 and 40 that have the kids at that age, and they all have families, and that's that combination that you should really be paying most attention to.
Right.
All right, let's talk about your predictions before we move over to the men then. I know how high you were on Kerber, and you said Kerber, Keys sleeper. Kerber was definitely a favorite, if not the pick. So, Kerber, Halep. Look, if Halep can break through and beat Kerber, then it's maybe the perfect match for her to do it into these conditions and in this situation. But boy, is Kerber playing she hasn't lost this year, so it's a tall task.
The physical prowess of Kerber is just beyond. I mean, this is more than what she was in 2016, Greg. I mean, I was on court with her, and I saw when she was practicing, and she was strong in 2016. She is just beyond that now. I mean, she is Rafa strong. When you look at Rafa and those arms and those legs, he looks strong. You look at Kerber, she has that same physical presence to her now. And that has given her enormous belief. But we are going to give Wim Fissette some credit. He believes in her. Again, it goes back to belief with these players.
Sure.
But it had to take Angie, that off season and all the indignities of last year of being snubbed, and of course the tears of being number one in the world, and then everyone dismissing her, writing her off. It took all those indignities for her to say, you know what, I've had enough. And when I saw Angie Kerber at the U.S. Open, there was an edge to her, and you could tell right there. She didn't like her practice court. She didn't like this. She didn't like that, and she was letting them know it. And I could see that edge coming back into her, saying, you know what, I am tired of being treated like this, and I'm going to do something about it. And when she got to Hopman Cup and publicly scolded Sasha Zverev for being 15 minutes late to practice, I knew that Angie, that stubbornness in her was back. And that's what you see on court. You see a stubbornness in her. It almost cost her against Shui because, there was the ego battle of trying to out-rally Shui in these cross-court rallies, which, Shui was obviously superior to. But then you finally saw Kerber make the adjustments. And she's not known for making mental adjustments. She's known for kind of, sticking in, the feet in and not wanting to change and not wanting to do anything differently. But she wanted that win so badly that she did make the changes in her game. And she did change up the patterns, and she did have to go out of her comfort zone. And so for me, it's about Angie's comfort zone versus Simona's innate athletic ability, her topspin, how she's able to use this offensive topspin now to really take Kerber off the court and control the points herself. I think the serving, though, is going to be the key, Greg. It was interesting. Kerber actually won more points off her first serve than Madison Keys. You wouldn't believe it.
No.
But I think that the serving is going to be very important. I think Simona, when she is serving strong and getting those first ones in, it just sets such a completely different tempo for the points. And it really puts Angie on her heels. And so I think it's going to be important for Simona to serve well and return well. And it'll be interesting to see. Look, she knows the lefty. She knows the lefty angles Angie has. And let's face it, Wim Fissette has coached Simona. Wim Fissette coached Simona before Darren. So there are no secrets on this court. Darren was one of the Adidas coaches, and of course Kerber was an Adidas player. So there are no secrets with this group. Everyone knows everyone. Everyone knows the styles, the patterns, and I think it's going to be who blinks first. And I think it's going to be a real battle, a phenomenal match, and I think we're going to be very lucky to see it. But I think it's going to be, it's about really Simona setting the tone with the serve, the return of serve, and having that mojo as well, which is so fun to see with Simona.
And your pick?
I don't want to pick this one. Well, we obviously, have a sentimental favorite with Simona. We always, go to support Simona. So it would be great to see her win. I'd love to see her get her first Grand Slam title. Sentimentally, I hope she wins the match. I think it's going to be a very, very tough match, though, because I think Kerber is as stubborn can be, and she is not going to give it away.
Yeah.
Simona's going to have to go out there and beat her.
Yeah, and that's what she should have to do. So yeah, I'm going with Kerber.
Of course, they may not. The fact that this is going to be such a battle, I do think Wozniacki should win the other semi. Again, we go back to after the Open and the indignancy she felt at the U.S. Open when she was put on practically a junior court for her first round while Maria got ash. And then, of course, she got finished in her match, which eventually was moved to a show court. But there was no security there, and she was so upset because she, didn't have someone to help her back to the locker room. She was so far away. And she went out and hit with McEnroe at his academy, Reynolds Island in New York. And I watched that practice, actually. And it was interesting because when Caroline first went on court, you could see she was 5-10 feet behind the baseline and hitting these little sitters but John, with his intensity, and his perfectionism, just started hitting with a certain tempo and really started firing the balls and didn't say anything, nothing mentioned. And within, I think, about 10 to 15 minutes, Greg, you just see the change in Caroline. And by the end of the hit, she was on that baseline. She was hitting aggressively, and you could see the mojo in her. The tempo was completely different. She was really firing balls, and she was keeping up with him. And it's just osmosis. We talk about how, again, being with these former greats is so important. Obviously the team and can tell these players 50 million times, you can do it. But sometimes it's the random person, it's the Kim Clijsters with Halep and, Virginia Rosic, obviously her mentor. But it's, having the conversation with Kim Clijsters telling her, we've all been through this. You're not going through anything differently. We've all felt the same way. We've all gone through the same things. Or it's Caroline with John McEnroe, or it's John McEnroe with Jack Sock at the Laver Cup. All these moments seem to have an impact. And so I think if Caroline can go out there with that McEnroe mojo, we call it, not the Minnie Mouse, then I think that she has a chance. And if Halep and Kerber kill each other on court in a knockdown 3-set match, they may be, one of them, the winner may be a little tired, and that may help Caroline as well.
All right, so
she's looking for her first Grand Slam title.
Yeah?
She's been number one in the world, as we all have noted, but she takes great umbrage. If she remembers how many years back losing to Li Na, you can better believe she remembers being called a journeyman last year. And don't think that she's not out there to right that wrong.
All right, over on the men's side, Marin Cilic was able to survive 5 sets, and Rafa Nadal was not. Nadal retired after going down 2-love in the 5th set, and really didn't have it left in the 4th set. Had a 3rd set win tiebreaker, but still, it was all Cilic after that. Nadal just wasn't able to stay fit the rest of the match, and now he's dealing with some injury concerns, including, you're talking about maybe the fittest guy on tour, and yet he's dealing with a hip injury. What is going on? We talked about Svitolina's hip injury, but now Nadal's got a hip injury.
And Andy Murray with a hip injury.
Yeah.
Just had surgery.
What's going on?
Yeah. Well, let's put it out there. Rafa, of course, we give him enormous credit, but he has not faced a top 25 ranked player until Cilic. And so, he has had great draws, and he, we're not taking any credit away from him. He won the matches. He won the U.S. Open. He's done well playing in Melbourne, but I don't think he's really been tested. Now, to me, we've been talking about these sleeveless shirts from Nike, and the arms are so incredibly defined, and so the strength is just enormous when you look at these arms. But it was the hip that gave away, and to me, I thought he kind of looked a little heavier than usual. He's in great shape. He's fit, but just not heavy in the sense of aesthetics, but heavy in the sense of he just seemed to be moving in just in a heavier way, if you can imagine that. There was no lightness to his movement. And in fact, he said in the third set, the hips started to get tired. He told the trainer that. He called the trainer out at 4-1 in the fourth. I think the culminating event was this drop shot he ran for where he finally felt something go. But he told the trainer he felt the hip was very tired in the third. So it was being worn down. It was the wear and tear. And again, he did not play any tune-up event. He said he had an abbreviated off-season because he is also someone who advocates for the fact that players are not getting enough of a break, enough of an off-season. They don't get to rest their bodies. Now, let's preface this by saying Rafa is over 30. Some of this is to be expected when you are over 30. It's a new life, as we've said many times on the show, when you turn 30, and the body and how the body responds. And we said at the beginning of these 2 weeks, this is going to be in the second week is going to be how the players reacted physically to all the elements, sure. The heat, the court surface. This is what happens down in Melbourne. And the fact that they are coming off an abbreviated season, they don't have the time to really get themselves 100%, and they're having to play a Grand Slam without that match readiness, that match toughness. And look, but Rafa's a veteran. He's how many Grand Slam titles? Sure. Obviously, he can hit the ground running. We didn't see a problem coming up. We thought he would make this a physical match with Cilic, who doesn't really have his mobility. But he made it too physical because Cilic was phenomenal, and he is cagey. He's a veteran. He wasn't going to give it away to Rafa. He was going to take it, even though I'm sure he knew Rafa was not feeling great. He had 20 aces, only 8 double faults. He won 77% of the points, Greg, on his first serve, and had 83 winners. Yes, 52 unforced errors, but 83 winners compared to 39 for Nadal. So he was obviously controlling the show, especially. But you have to look back at this match, Greg. I mean, Nadal was up a set and a break. Yeah. And had he won that second set, he could have won this in 3 and been off the court. And this probably would not have been an issue. And then, of course, with the draw he had, you'd have to favor him certainly getting to that final. But he was not able to pull out that second set. And to me, that was the bigger issue for Nadal, is the fact that he was up a break and not really able to solidify there and put Cilic away in that second set. Because when you're up 2 sets to love on Nadal, it's hard to come back in 5. But Cilic was 16 for 18 at net. He obviously has the big serve, the net game to take advantage. And look, he got to the finals of Wimbledon. He is obviously a very formidable veteran, and to me, I think he's such an intelligent guy. He's one of the most intelligent players I've ever watched, and so you give him full credit. But this goes back to Rafa, and this is what happens in the entail of the careers. The body just gives out. The mind still wants it. The heart still is, pounding for the victories, but the body just gives out. And there was nothing worse, Greg, to be honest with you, than to see him limp out of the site after that. Yeah. It was just tough. And it was tough to watch in those last 2 games where you knew he was injured, and you could just see it was all heart, all soul, but the body just wasn't willing.
And
no Tony, no Uncle Tony there.
No.
For the first time, I will guarantee you, this may be a stretch, but I will guarantee you we are going to see Uncle Tony at some point.
All right, so Marin Cilic is now the favorite to go to the final because he's going to take on the upstart from England, Kyle Edmund, who upset KyrgiosDimitrov. And speaking of Dimitrov, after the match, he talked about his letdown of losing to Edmund in 4 sets. And exactly, his feelings on the subject.
I would say all the matches out here, especially from day one, I was not playing well. It took me a lot of work to get back to playing a decent match once again, and against Nick, for sure. There's, you played the crowd, you played him, you played your own expectations. So there's a lot of components that come into the game, but in the same time, I was just at least happy that I found a way. But all that behind the scene, what do you do in order for you to feel better? on the court takes a lot out of you, and it doesn't matter how fit I am. I think also mentally I was just a little bit tired. With each match you were draining up, and you try things the next day to kind of get better, get into a better shape, in a better headspace. But yeah, today was just one of those days also that I just couldn't find a way. Simple as that. You have days like that. In a way, I need to also see what exactly had happened. I mean, I kind of felt okay, but still, there's a lot of factors out there right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, listening to him, you would think that he just played Kyrgios, Federer, and Nadal. At this stage
You're still thinking about the match.
I mean, seriously. I mean, at this stage of his career, should he really be this worn down psychologically heading into a match after one tough match? I mean, what's going on?
Well, he actually had a few tough matches. As you remember, he had to come back, and he had a couple. He had a 5-setter with the American Mackie McDonald. But he did not. I don't think he was playing well at the beginning of the tournament, and then of course the match with Kyrgios, he was able to perform at his best, very solid, mentally solid. But it just shows what went into that match. I think, as you just mentioned, and as we heard from Grigor, he was still getting over the match. He still could not put that behind him. That's how much it took out of him. And it was interesting because, of course, Nick Kyrgios, who always reads people very well, said to him at the end, believe in yourself, believe in yourself. Again, we go back to self-confidence, belief. It's on both tours. It's with any athlete, with anyone. Sure. Is that you can tell them, anyone can tell them over and over again, it's got to come from within.
Yep.
To me, look, you give Edmund credit. This is a good guy,
absolutely.
Greg. He is young. He has a huge future ahead of him. He has all the shots. He's strong. He's got weapons. He's got the fitness now. He's working hard. And it's great. And actually now he'll be ranked, I think, higher than Andy Murray. So he'll be the highest ranking Englishman now on tour, which is interesting. But I think that it's been also a process for him in belief. As we mentioned, it was up match points on Jared Donaldson in Miami, up against Jack Sock 5-1 in Bercy, not able to put it away. And you could imagine, we saw what poor Simona had to go through by not putting a few matches away on her own. Mm-hmm. Well, here was Edmund, not able to put matches away with big leads. So it was a process in the off season, a process, and it's about repetition, as Sharapova would say. Where do you get the confidence? Where do you get the belief? Repetition, hard work, doing it over and over again, learning from the losses, getting the wins, and progressing. It's all about the process. And for him, I think with Edmund, the process has been just so terrific because, again, it's also about those random people, whether it's mentoring from Andy or mentoring from other top stars that also help you in building that confidence and building the belief, that then change the attitude and make you want to work harder, make you want to be more positive and more professional. It all goes hand in hand, and I give Edmund a lot of credit because, look, he was playing a challenger in Vero Beach not long ago, and so he's had to really start at the bottom and pay his dues. And he's young now, and I think that he has a huge future. So I think it's great to get a window on the new faces we're going to see on the men's tour, because he's one of the ones we haven't talked about. Having said that, Grigor, where do you go? Well, again, Danny Velverdue. I mean, how many times can you say to Grigor, you can win Grand Slam titles, you can be number one?
Yeah.
He's got to really, again, it's got to be repetition. It's got to be about going back and being professional and keep working at it. And I think Grigor will come to it because he's so talented. But it was interesting to see. Certainly, Kyrgios got an assist on that for Edmund.
By the way, I didn't ask you about this, and I think I might have asked you about this before. But what on earth, with Kyrgios, what is it that he continuously does or says when he has to? I mean, it's like almost after every point, he goes over and looks over at his bench.
Well, look, this is picking up on what Novak and Andy were doing last year. You remember them? I mean, it was just a running conversation with Andy in his box.
Yes.
And the language wasn't so hot either. So, I think that there's certain players that really depend on the external cues to some extent. And Nick's always said he wanted to play NBA basketball, and, he loved being part of a team. And I think it is important for Nick to feel that team.
Okay.
It was important for him to have Isla in his corner now. These things give him a balance. It gives him a certain support that he likes to have and to play his best tennis. I don't think he does need a coach. He's so intelligent. He reads opponents better than anyone and really knows how to exploit their weaknesses and strengths on and off court, quite frankly. But, Nick, Nixon, look, we've been big supporters of Nick Kyrgios.
Yeah.
I think that, again, it's a process. And when the attitude, people have talked about his attitude, but again, I really think it's a matter of belief with him too, that when we see him really feel that he wants to go get it, he wants to have that confidence to do it, we're going to see him even get into better shape, put in the hours that he needs to do that. So, and I think he's getting there. I think this is the best we've ever seen Nick Kyrgios in Melbourne. But it's a difference because he obviously has confidence in himself in many areas.
Yeah.
But now the question is that can that translate into the gym?
Yeah, it's disappointing anytime you get a big match with players like Dimitrov and Kyrgios that you're rooting for, and then because what I was saying was. Myself, because I like both of them, the winner of that match to possibly win the whole thing. My thing was, well, whoever wins this match, you do not lose the next match. You always say that. It's like the team that pulls off the big
right.
win, and then the next game they lose. It's like, don't do that. So disappointed to see Dimitrov go down, but as you said, Kyle Edmund, a player.
Well, and I think that Tsonga, the match Kyrgios had with Tsonga, was a tough match against his idol. I think that took something out of Kyrgios.
True.
And I do think that impacted his performance with Dimitrov. So this is what we said about Grand Slam when you ask who can win it. Who can go the distance in the fortnight?
Yep.
Who has the mental and physical stamina to go the distance in the 3 out of 5 set men's matches? And so this is why we're going to see a lot of surprises, unpredictable results, because this generation is knocking on the door. They're not there yet. They don't have what Roger has. And of course, thank goodness my evening ended with Roger winning, because the first 3 games I was just not a happy camper.
Yeah, well, you had a feel, of course. You knew that the only way Berdych was going to beat Federer was he was going to have to win that first set. And he was going to have to close the deal as soon as possible, and win the first set, and have some hope and confidence in okay, maybe I could do this. As soon as Roger came back and evened things up in the first set, you knew it was over.
Look, I absolutely adore Roger Federer because he just does everything perfectly on and off court. He is so well thought out. He is so well prepared. And but this was a match where, again, he had a letdown, quite frankly, in the London final when he lost to Goffin. And so, he was able, we saw vulnerability. We saw it at the Canadian Open where he, quite frankly, if there was any one instance last year where he wasn't prepared, that was it. And he suffered that back injury, which really prevented him from playing full out at the Open and getting that number 1 ranking. Now, even though Rafa will retain the number 1 ranking if Roger wins, they're within, I think, 115 points or 120 points. So Roger has narrowed the gap significantly. And that's if he wins the title, obviously. But, I think that with Roger, 15, he played such a tight match. 15 aces, winning 83% of his first serves, 61 winners rather, compared to 22 for Berdych. Once he gets going, Greg, you just watch him and just say, boy, this is just someone who has extraordinary talent. Who's just, the talent and the ability that he has, the athleticism, the racket skills, the court sense, the movement up and back, side to side. This is something you really can't teach. This is something, really beyond. And that's why I think, to me, he's the GOAT, because he's just been setting a standard in everything he does on and off court. And that is why the players so respect him and so take everything he has to say to heart. There's the innate ability, but there's the thinking. He didn't panic at 3-love. It was only 1 break, actually. And he didn't panic. He didn't get upset. But when I started seeing him hit those backhand winner return serves down the line on the ad side, I knew that he was finding his range and rhythm. And he has been starting off a little slowly. He has been getting off the mark a little slowly in the beginning of matches. And so it'll be interesting to see playing Chung what he does, because I think that Chung, you can't underestimate Chung. Chung, whose role model was Novak Djokovic, a nemesis of Roger for so many years. I think that Chung can give Roger a real run for his money. He's going to make it a physical battle. He's younger. He's got fresher legs. Those legs on Chung. He is strong as an ox. And you know what, Greg? He wants it. And yes, he is being very reverent to all the champions, including Novak, who he beat, and Sasha Zverev as well. But you know what? Underneath that, he wants it. He's ready for it. And we talked about Grigor and Kyrgios, maybe not ready for it yet to win the whole title. I think Chung does have that, actually. So I think Roger is really going to have to get off to a good start, because when you're playing guys like this, you got to make your presence known in the beginning. You got to shut them down and take away the belief.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like someone was saying, well, Svitolina finally started to get a little bit more aggressive at a set and 3 love. Well, the problem with that is, at a set and 3 love, your opponent actually thinks they can win the match.
Yeah,
and they're not going to give you any free points. They're not going to give away anything.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that if Roger gives Chung too much space and gives him too much of a lead, that belief could get very tough, and he could get very stubborn out there and make life very tough for Roger. So I think Roger's going to have to hit a lot more balls than he has. He has also had a very good draw, and we remarked about that. Everyone thought, he's got such a tough draw. Not really.
Nope.
He didn't have Novak. He didn't have Sasha. He didn't have Goffin. He didn't have Del Potro. And so I don't think he's been tested, and so that can be good or bad in one way. Physically, he should be fine, really fresh, but also hasn't really had to be tested. Berdych it was there a little bit, but Berdych did not play as well as he did in Miami. He made too many unforced errors, and really didn't have that psychological edge that he has shown in previous matches where he actually beat Roger. So I think Chung is going to be a whole different story, and I think it's going to be a great, great match.
Yeah, and it also may be a benefit to Chung that they have never faced each other. So that actually could benefit Chung because, look, you're looking for any edge possible when you're going up against, which you're never going to get, when you're going up against a player like Federer if you're a player like Chung. And maybe the only thing you can think about is, well, he's never played me before, so anything's possible.
Well, I did think that Chung showed vulnerability against Sandgren in the last match. It was, to me, a longer match than it had to be, and I was surprised by that. And I think that Roger has the multi-dimensions to his game, including being able to attack Chung, to rush him, to really be the offensive one, to come into net, put the volleys away. Roger is very effective on all parts of the court, whereas Chung is really a solid baseliner, but not as multi-dimensional as Roger, obviously. So I think Roger's going to have to use all that to beat Chung. But he's so quick, and the fact that he hasn't had a tough match, I think he should be fresh physically.
Mm-hmm.
And, look, it still takes a lot of mojo to beat Roger, but there's no pressure on Chung. No pressure at all.
Nope.
He's going out there. He can swing for the hills. There's no pressure on him. And Roger, I think that there is a little bit of pressure on Roger. I think that he is going to feel that a little bit. But I'm hoping he's going to start off better than he did against Berdych, with the big serving, big returning, and taking the initiative.
All right, Andrea. So we're
not going to talk about Tennis Sandgren's his statement to the press. We're going to let that go, because we hope Tennis Sandgren goes home, thinks about things, thinks who he tweets with, thinks who he follows, and broadens his perspective a little bit, because that's an otherwise glorious run for him, and it's certainly a big step for him in his career. We want to focus on the tennis,
that's right.
But we also want to mention that Serena Williams and Venus Williams will be playing Fed Cup for the United States in a week or so. We are going to be there for that, 2 weeks rather. And Coco Vandeweghe is joining them, a fourth player to be named. And, of course, the men in the Davis Cup will have Isner and Stevie Johnson and Sam Querrey there, and Ryan Harrison playing in Serbia. So that was announced. We're very excited about that. So, I mean, it keeps going, Greg.
And we're going to be back again in 2 days to keep this going with our Australian Open programming that we've had here for the first, for now going on almost 2 weeks. We've got one more show to go. So, Andrea, enjoy the matches over the next couple of days, and we'll preview.
How's my mojo going for you, Greg? My self-confidence and belief.
I appreciate that. I wouldn't expect anything less. We'll talk to you on Friday.
Absolutely. All right.
So for Andrea Leander, Greg DePalma, thanks for tuning in to this Australian Open Shot Clock podcast on the Prime Sports Radio Network. We'll see you on Friday to wrap everything up with a championship round preview.